Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Hey, good evening, Charlie.
Hey, Shu, how's it going?
Good. It's midnight there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's been a while. I think we took a little break because I think I was too busy and you traveled to Japan for a couple of weeks, right?
We'll travel to the U.S. for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, to the U.S. for a couple of weeks and you're back in Japan. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. So let's dive into our first topic of the day, which is I think everybody's talking about in Japan now, which is Panchan Rina got arrested.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. I mean, she's a popular kickboxer who fought in RIZIN and also in RIZIN too. And I guess she just got arrested for selling a fake poster with fake signature autograph of Tenshin Nasukawa and what's his name? Takeru.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard that she saw this poster, which is supposed to be you have to buy some kind of contract with some water company and you get that this is like the limited edition of posters. But apparently she took some images from the internet or something and printed it. So the person who received it realized it's a different color, and also there's no logo on it. So it was bad job, by Panchan.
If you look at it, it's idiotic because a Japanese fan actually posted what the actual poster looks like, and Tenshin and Takeru signed it separately, so they used different pens.
Okay.
And she used the same pen and didn't do a very good job of forging them. It's like very obviously not the same thing.
Right.
But it kind of revealed she has like all of these accounts on all these auction websites.
Yes, that's what I want to get into because Panchan Rina, for some reason, people thought she's like an idol fighter. Now she's not some sponsors. Now she fought for RIZIN. She moved to a very good apartment and stuff like that. So, but because of the injury, she didn't fight for almost over a year, right? So,
right.
So obviously she was hurting for money, right?
I would also say that I don't think her level of popularity, I don't think she's been able to monetize it.
No.
Because she got popular because she associated herself with Mikuru and Kai. Right. Goes on their YouTube. She's one of the guest commentators on the Breaking Down show, but none of those are paying gigs.
No,
and she gets a lot of YouTube views, but not enough to make a lot of money. And so
exactly this YouTube thing, a lot of fighters in Japan probably realize that by now that you really have to produce lots of videos and get lots of like a viewership going. Otherwise, it's going to be very small money.
Well, you have to get millions of views,
right?
Any kind of money, and she doesn't get that.
No, that's why obviously she resorted to selling her stuff on this internet auctions, right? Like a free market, Mercari.
It was weird. The kind of stuff she was selling was weird. It was like because she had a because I think what happens is because she got arrested, she really hasn't had a chance to go back and delete a bunch of stuff.
It's still there.
But it's still there, and so she has like Medicari accounts. She has like PayPay accounts. She has Yahoo Aqua accounts, and it's like weird stuff. It's like wetsuits, makeup, like weird fashion items.
You know what? I gotta tell you this. Some of the stuff that she sold was her worn, worn shorts, whatever that is. I think everybody who lives in Tokyo knows that if you go to the back street with Shibuya, you can buy a worn, used underwear, a panty of high school or junior high school girls, which is sick. But it's a sick culture that Japan has, and I think it's part of it, right?
What's weird is those accounts don't identify her as Panchan Rina.
But it's kind of obvious, right? Because something that the stuff she sells.
Right, but I also heard a rumor that the guy that bought the poster knew it was a fake, but he just bought it to kind of because he knew that it was a fake and wanted to confirm it and then rat her out. But I heard a rumor about that, but not about that, but I would also like to add an interesting part about Japanese culture is a lot of those posters are received by like VIP people that go to the Takeru Tenshin fight.
Sure, right.
If you bought one of those like $10,000 or $30,000 tickets, you probably got a signed poster.
Sure.
but it's given. It's pretty much expressly said, you cannot sell this.
No.
And that's like a big difference in American culture. Like a lot of Japanese goods that are giving you that promotion, it's with the understanding you cannot resell this, you cannot put this on these apps to sell them. I think that's also another giant no-no of what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just that she sold a fraud, it's that she's selling this stuff, and you're not supposed to do that.
Right. But again, that's actually people going towards maybe more Americanized way, because we see everything on the sale on eBay and stuff like that. And anyway, so we go back to this thing. I think Panchan Rina obviously was hurting for money, and she was fake it to make it, right? Beside, basically, she was living in a good life and pretend like she was making good money, but in reality, she was selling her stuff on flea market and internet auctions and stuff like that. And now I guess she was still selling fakes. And this particular thing, I think the person who bought it paid like 99,000 yen, which is like $800.
Yeah.
The police will never move for $800. So the way I see it is that, the prosecutor will never prosecute anyone for just a one case for not $800. You know what I mean? So I have a feeling that the police has way more than this one complaint. I think it has to be way more.
That's a possibility. I also have a feeling that the person that bought it might be very wealthy and have connections.
Could be, right? Yeah. And it's so funny. You remember RIZIN Daisuke-san? Remember at
Yes.
that table? He lives in the same prefecture as this victim, but it's in different cities, so I don't think it's him. It's a different age too, just to protect his,
Did you see that Tenshin came out and asked for the charges to be dropped and said he would sign a poster for the guy to have?
Yeah, but that's not the way to do it. And
But that brings up a point, though, is Panchan an idiot? She knows Tenshin. She could literally get him to sign a poster and sell it. Like,
yeah.
Why is she selling frauds?
Yeah, exactly. But the point is, I think she couldn't get the actual limited edition poster, which
true.
she could have just signed up for some contract or whatever, commit and pay some of the yearly fee, and she could have gotten it. But I think the point is, I think she got away with it more than once.
Well, she has to, because
iceberg, and she just got busted.
Just the number of accounts that she has for different free market sites is insane, and the number of items she's selling. So, like, this is how she's making money.
Right. Now, I want to get to this point here, that this is a very weird Japanese culture in Japanese MMA, that a lot of fighters are not earning enough money from the fight purse, so they rely way too much on sponsors or different source of incomes. Now, when you really think about it, if you cannot make money living from fighting, you're not a professional fighter, right? But in Japan, they think if you have enough sponsors or some other source of income, as they call yourself as a fighter, then you make yourself a professional fighter, instead of just keep winning fights and get to the better league and earn higher purse. I think that's a part of it. And it's like that with some of the young Japanese fighters now, that they prefer going out to a potential sponsor's dinner or party than going to the training.
Yeah, it's idiotic to me, because especially with her, there's ways that she could have made money legitimately that wouldn't have taken too much time and wouldn't require her to like go beg for sponsors. But if she didn't want to work, there's ways she could make money, because a lot of fighters will hold like fan events and do things like that where they make money. They'll get barbecue and the fans will pay money. But I mean, just idiotic. But I see what you're saying. It just sounds like she should probably have a job.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, the point is, if you're not fighting, you're not earning any money, is the way you should look yourself. Unless if you're earning big money per fight, real big money where you can just fight and not work for 3-4 years, whatever. That's not the case.
Even big fighters are working. I mean, how up till recently, weren't Kai and Mikuru both working at that lawyer's office? Rena was working at the team's office. All these famous fighters were working.
I'm not going to name specific names here, but I tell this to younger generation of Japanese fighters all the time, the people in early 20s. They have a parents who likes to spoil them. So instead of telling them to go and get a job and just train at night, whatever, some father give them a car so he can go ride around to the different gym and train and not have to work. so they can concentrate on training and try to get to this professional career going. I don't think it never works that way. And I tell these young guys that there's a very famous world champion boxer named Yoko Gushiken in Japan, and he was working at the tempura restaurant till he became a world champion. You know what I mean? So that's and maybe I'm a little old fashioned, but really a younger generation of Japanese MMA fighters, they do have a parents, they tend to spoil them, like, so you don't have to work, you don't have to go through a real hardship in life, and so they're weak, as a person.
I think you need the hunger. You want to you need that desire to get to a better position. I mean, even what GSP was a trash man living in a flop house, driving to New York City to train. I mean,
same thing. Like Connor was living off on like welfare. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, Jose Aldo was living in a terrible area in Brazil. He had to, get out of that situation by fighting. But I don't see that from, today's younger generation fighters. I'm not saying everybody, but most.
Also, I mean, Rina was a way bigger kickboxer than Panchan Rina ever is, and she was working in like the sales department at Beams for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And Hamasaki still works full time, right? So what the hell is all these young fighters who's really not that established thinks they can make a living out of sponsorship?
I think Panchan Rina's case especially, you have to blame kind of like the whole YouTube phenomenon where they're like, I want to portray the image that I don't work, that I'm this great appealing fighter, so I have to not work to do that. And it's just weird.
And not only that, I think she was spending a lot of money on the side too, right? For like facials, all kinds of stuff, which she was like saying that on interviews. I don't know if she was actually doing it, but again, so she does remind me of a very, 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 very smaller version of Elizabeth Holmes from the Theranos. She was faking it, but she just got busted. Now, what's so funny about the Japanese society is that even the biggest name actress who got busted for big drug scandals or whatever that is, they always make a comeback. So I think, also I have to mention the fact that in Japan, there's, the law that she could get booked for 23 days, interrogated without a lawyer. Right?
Yeah, well, what happens to do that, and then they can just add a different charge and hold you for another 30 days.
Exactly. So they could keep holding you for 23 days. Right.
Yeah.
And, it's so funny that a lot of fans actually send me a direct message on Twitter begging, I think it's Panchan's fan, almost begging me to sign her up and take her to America and train, and, grow her into this professional MMA fighter. I'll tell you this on the record. There are also some female fighter who just got arrested and then got out of, whatever. And immediately this girl started tweeting, saying, I want to fight in America. But I'm telling you this right now, if you get arrested, you cannot apply for ESTA. You're going to have to go through and get a proper visa and everything and go to America and stuff like that. So you just create yourself a big hurdle. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, I know who you're talking about.
You know what I mean, right? So, no, I'm serious. Japan is pretty weird. Even ESTA, even say if you get arrested by even though it was a false arrest, or even they get arrested and not get prosecuted, if you're, innocent, whatever that is, if you get arrested, you do not get ESTA. That's what it says. You know what I mean? Right. So, Panchan, obviously now when she has to go somewhere outside of Japan, she would have to go through and get a proper visa, right? So it's not going to make anything that easy,
Yeah, I think she was talking about going into boxing because I know she has that torn knee. So I think she's desperate to make money. This all comes in because now that it makes sense, she was talking about going into boxing because she needs money.
Right. Now, I think when she comes out, I'm pretty sure on this day of like a shock value, when people think those breaking down is something very interesting, I'm pretty sure some promoter will offer her some kind of money to fight some stage against some YouTuber or some girl boxer or whoever.
I mean, I'm still unsold on her. She's never fought anyone that would impress me as a fighter, as a kickboxer.
Right. But she's a name now, and she's a now household name because of this incident. Right. So
felt to me like what did Kiss say? Any press is good press. It's like because of this incident, she's now more well known than she ever was.
You know what? I have this very interesting. If Kazuo Misaki can continue fighting after fleeing in police, it might be okay. I'm gonna have to I'm going to tell you this. I know the details of this. I'm going to defend Mr. Misaki for that. It's kind of idiotic for him to run away from the scene, but this happens in Japan all the time. You've seen some policemen tell the driver to stop, but they ignore and drive away. You've seen that all over the place, right? In America, it never happens. You get shot if you do that, right? But in Japan, it's very, very common. And that's what Misaki-san did. And what police does when somebody does that, police purposely, I'm going to say this on the record, and I hate police will hate me, they hit their hands on the mirror and stuff like that. And they'll record your number plate and they'll issue a warrant. That's what they do. So it's a stupid for Misaki-san to drive away from a scene like that, but it wasn't like how you're fleeing from, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're fleeing and chased by helicopters and stuff like that.
Going down the highway.
Like that, you know, it's very common in Japan, you know? But anyway, so yes, I think Panchan can make a comeback. I think she will somehow, right? So
it's not like she was playing for major promotions anyway. The promotions need Panchan more than she needs them.
Right. So let's see. She will probably get out in about another 19 days also, right? And we'll see how she will do it. And I'm pretty sure she'll hold some kind of press conference or something official to explain, right? Yeah. So let's talk something positive, which is Bellator MMA versus RIZIN.
Oh, yes.
I think this is a fantastic card, I thought.
It's amazing. I was really surprised at the fighters because normally when promotions co-promote, they seem to be hesitant to put their best fighters forward.
Them
losing, but it's definitely not the case here.
No, this is like all out. Really, champion versus champion, top 4 against top 4, whatever, you know. It's just it's the fantastic card, and we really rare see it, right? I mean, even the North American or the world hardcore fans are excited about this show, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's better than Bellator cards. This is like the best of both worlds. Bellator doesn't put this many champions on their cards.
You know, let me tell you this. I like Bellator. It's some fights really good, but just because they're on Showtime, from our American audience point of view, if you don't buy Showtime, you don't get to watch it. Yeah. So you do lose a track of it. And, I'm a huge drama fan. That's why I happen to have a Showtime. But I know a lot of people who doesn't have a Showtime. It's not like they have the best movies. And their limited series are okay. You know what I mean? Just only 1 or 2 good ones. So,
it's like people, if they're going to get something, they usually get HBO.
Right.
And then, like, if they are really into stuff, then they get Showtime as well.
Exactly. But right now that we have the Peacocks to, like a Netflix, all kinds of stuff for the drama TV fans. But now I'm hearing that they're going to Paramount Plus from next year, Bellator, which is a much bigger audience. So hopefully that's going to attract more viewers, because right now, because the fact the Professional Fighters League on the ESPN, it's just easier for us to watch PFL than Bellator.
Paramount Plus, what Spike TV used to be.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So
way better for them.
Paramount Plus, I think it's Fight TV. There's something else too, but it's much bigger than audience than the Showtime.
Yeah.
Right.
That'd be way better.
Now, so let's talk about this one. I think it's amazing that they're bringing those champions to fight. And the only thing it's kind of disappointing from the Japanese RIZIN fans' point of view is the fact that there's only one Japanese, right? In a way, in the top 4, which is Ogi Kubo.
Oh yeah, because Horiguchi's fighting on Team Bellator.
Exactly, and Takeda's in there, but he's not exactly a champion or anything like that. So it's all about the clever Koike, Satoshi Souza, right? And Sucho Kim, who is really not exactly representative of here.
Do you like how he's a RIZIN fighter now?
Yeah, but I would say he's a Road FC fighter, right? Almost.
Well, he's fought for RIZIN, 2 times? Like 5 years between fights?
But he's a great fighter, and
he's an excellent fighter.
He's an excellent fighter, and like I said, I think that fight him against Ogiko was sort of ruined last year's Bantamweight Grand Prix.
Yeah. Well, I think they clearly wanted RIZIN wants to win, since he's clearly one of the better fighters that's appeared in RIZIN recently.
Right.
They're like, let's put him forward because you want to win some fights.
Now, let me ask you this though. Like all these Japanese fans, they still have this pro wrestling mind that, let's say theoretically, if that RIZIN loses all the fights, do you think that would be end of RIZIN in terms of promotion? Probably not, right? It's still continue.
No,
Right.
I think it'd be way more damaging to Bellator if their champions lost than if RIZIN's champions lost. Because Japanese fighters also love a comeback story.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I feel like they like it when fighters lose because it makes them more human almost or something. But Japanese fighters like when a fighter loses and then goes back and like wins in a rematch.
True. Now, point is, can they get a rematch? Probably not, right? That's going to be a hard one for something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very one time kind of thing, you know. But anyway, so this is going to be very interesting, and I think to be surprised, a lot of Japanese fan likes Pitbull because I guess partly because he has a Japanese Twitter account and he had a Kyohei training there, and he may even be one of the most popular fighter of Bellator in Japan.
Well, he's popular because he does his social media in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks positively about Japan, which is easy thing to do to make Japanese fans love you.
Right. And I think he has some representative of buddy or friends, the Brazilian who also maybe can write Japanese, who lives in Japan.
Okay, because yes, he tweets in Japanese all the time.
Right, I know. I think Kyohei said that that's the guy he went through to try to get more connection going with the Pitbull to get this to join his training camp. So so this is going to be a good show, and you're going to be there, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And let me ask you this: we talked about this, that for some reason the ticket prices for RIZIN shows are very high now.
Oh, that's what cracked me up because on the RIZIN Discord channel, all the American fans were all like super excited. All the foreign fans like, yeah, this is a great card. And all I was thinking about was like, those ticket prices are nuts. Like, I'm like, you guys are watching this on pay-per-view. If you go, I'm like, if I go with 4 people, I got to drop like over $1,000 to go to the show. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, compared to like in the beginning, I think the price went up since the match 2022.
Well, the price went up since the pandemic.
Pandemic, right? Yeah. Okay.
And
so
it essentially doubled the price of everything.
So it's like they said that earlier that I guess it's like a surcharge for airline companies. They use hurricane or something like an excuse, and they raised the price and it never went down, right? So
never went down. It's crazy prices.
Right. But you know what surprises me is that the ticket sales are going very, very well for this show or even the show before that. Because I look at the ticket sales because the fighters sell tickets, and I see all these orders coming in and how RIZIN had to say no to some of the orders, So it's obvious that it's selling very, very well. And at this point, I think only 2 cheapest seats are available. I think all the other most expensive seats are gone.
Well, I think that RIZIN working with Bellator has made Bellator appear like a very top-level world promotion to the Japanese people. And so this is very much like a very interesting event to them because it's like kind of like RIZIN versus the best champions in the world in their eyes. Right. And so it's kind of interesting. This co-promotion between RIZIN and Bellator over the past couple of years has really, really benefited both of them in the Japanese market. I think the ticket sales, when this was announced, I mean, Japanese fans went nuts.
Right. And I think it did excite the hardcore fans outside Japan too, and face it, I think it's hard to kind of grasp what's going on in Bellator these days because it's like compared to like a professional fighter league, they have the playoffs and like the championships and stuff like that. So it's kind of easy to figure out what's going on in terms of a quote unquote story. But so this also put Bellator in a different light where they are more like a world class, like internationally organize the promotions that they could do this kind of thing with the big promotions outside the country. So I think this is something new, right? I mean, not new, but something it's different, right? So compared to the other promotions.
Okay, well, it definitely benefits both of them. Makes them both look bigger than they really are.
But again, my small concern is that, like how many percentage of today's MMA fans are actually really interested in Japan? Or the Japanese fighters. I see that the interest being kind of fading away, for the last 5 to 10 years.
Unfortunately, I think you look at like Bloody Elbow or MMA Fighting, and they're going to write articles that they think get clicks. as a result, they barely cover any of this stuff.
Right, exactly, right. So that's the problem. I mean, there are great fights going on. There's like awesome fighters, but it's not covered enough, and more, right? More North American oriented here. So less and less people watch anything besides UFC. So,
Well,
right? So
I see one guy. I see a WMMA scene commented something I've seen a lot of guys complaining about in the RIZIN Discord is that RIZIN still hasn't announced how to watch this outside of Japan.
right, yeah.
So,
So
I mean,
they don't
kind
get
of shoot them, they kind
right.
of shoot themselves in the foot with the international audience with stuff like this.
Maybe that's what maybe Bellator is supposed to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So
Well, I remember the last time that RIZIN and Bellator did an event together. Even Bellator didn't know. People were like asking them at the press conference, pre-fight press conference, like, how do you? Because there was the fights that happened after. There was the Bellator portion, and then there was like the post-fight RIZIN fights, and nobody could answer how to watch those fights. There's like a really weird moment. It's like, how did you guys not think about this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of, I can't blame RIZIN for not doing a marketing outside Japan, because I know how many people works in that office. Their hands must be tight, full.
It's like, I'm gonna say it's like 4 or 5 people, right?
Exactly, and it's amazing they put up that kind of caliber of shows. You know what I mean? With that number of people, and I'm going to Japan in 2 weeks, and I'm thinking, I'm going to see them the first time like 2.5 years. So I'm picking up something to give them as a gift, and I'm thinking about giving them a coffee or tumbler or something like that, because they don't have a time to sleep.
Just a case of Monster Energy drinks.
Exactly. Right. So case of Monster Energy, exactly right.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So it's amazing that they put up that show. And here's
so I was stunned, because I was honestly expecting it to be like guys that kind of have name value but aren't champions and things like that. It's really the best of both promotions going against each other. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so this is going to be a good one. And I just noticed that, and in this screen, I say Koike's last name doesn't have an L, right?
No, it doesn't. They made a typo.
Okay, I just realized that. Okay, anyway, so all right, so this is going to be a good show. So let's talk about next issue. Let's talk about this one, Ren Hiramoto. It's been a while, last time when we spoke. So let's cover this one, because he's my client, so I can't talk so much details. But obviously, he won the last fight.
Yeah.
And since then, it seems like he kind of changed the opinions of many Japanese fans out there, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. He looked really good in his last fight. I know there was the whole issue with, because did he injure his foot going into the fight and wasn't able to run or something?
Yeah, he actually, right. He injured his little finger on the foot about 4 weeks before the fight. And, I had the x-ray. He even made T-shirts out of x-ray, right? And we actually canceled the fight first. We said, no, he can't do it. But, of course, Mr. Sakakibara really wanted this fight to happen. It's a main event. So they, this is what the most promotions do after they speak with management. When management doesn't budge, and they will say, okay, sure, then can I talk to the fighter directly? And I always say, yeah, sure, go ahead. So Sakakibara-san had talked with Ren more than a few times. He went into the office, they talked more, and at the end, I think Ren got convinced by Mr. Sakakibara. But of course, I kept telling him to say no if he doesn't feel like he could do it,
Yeah.
And this is his first fight of the new 5-fight contract, so it was very important. So we did the negotiation to the very, very end. So it turned out to be a good one, and for him and for RIZIN, he did the job as a main event guy, right? And yeah, and I tell you this, that he had only fought 4 MMA pro fights, and 3 of them are headliner in major MMA promotion. I mean, that may be the Guinness Book World Book of Record.
It's pretty good. Pretty good, and he looked especially dominant against the Dominator. No pun intended, but
I think that's what happened. And just because his left foot was injured, he really had to look for the counter shot. So he couldn't really go in, he can't shoot in for, takedowns and stuff like that. So he basically waited for Dominator to come in. So that's a situation where 2 strikers are fighting. And when you are fighting against a seasoned striker looking for a counter shot, waiting for you to make a move, you really need a good skill as a striker to make him move towards you. And that skill, there's no way the Dominator had. He's not a striker. But Dominator stepped into that world and tried to beat him with that, and that just didn't work. And I mean,
No.
I'll be honest with you, I was concerned first, maybe a couple of minutes of the fight, but a few minutes into the fight, you know how Dominator engaged in the close range striking and got hit and went down. I felt very comfortable. If Dominator fights like that, there's no way he's going to beat Ren. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now the Dominator had like almost 30 fights and ran only fourth fight and beat him, and beat the guy who dominated Kyohei Aguirre. So now all of a sudden, all the RIZIN fans are now thinking, oh, he may be one of the best. He should be fighting Mikuru and blah, blah, blah. Now, what do you think about that now?
I mean, Mikuru's probably a little fast.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather they build him up a little slower than that. Get him some more experience in the cage before because I mean, that fight will always be there. So I just get him more experience first and not rush it. Because I mean, he's popular, and they can have him fight fighters like Dominator and get more experience in the cage, get more comfortable in there, and just give him more time. He's young; he's going to develop quickly, but he needs that chance still. Plus, right. I mean, he's at a point now. Everything he says on Twitter almost becomes like trending almost.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it's like a younger generation thing. Like I don't understand it. Like, I don't get it. What's so good? I mean, he's interesting and funny, but I don't know why he tracks so much. You know?
I was so confused because he was doing like that. He was like going back and forth with King Rina on Twitter. And, like everybody was talking about it, and I'm like, whatever this guy does on Twitter, people just love to talk about. Right. So he's getting more and more popular. And I would let his skill set in MMA catch up to that before I threw him to the Sharks again.
Yeah. But, you know, here's what it is. I also have to say this on the record that before, we did the negotiation in the last minute about this fight. Of course, I had to talk to a couple other fighters who has trained with the Dominator before to fill him out how he is and stuff like that. Surprisingly, many younger fighters told me that he's not that good, Shu. So I think it kind of tells that maybe the level of competitions in Japanese MMA is really, really not that high anymore. You know, here's a guy who used to be a deep champion. I won't name names. There's a couple of guys who had less than 5 fights told me, oh, I trained with him. I will submit him easy. You know? So
yeah, I mean, Japan's always had that problem where
yes,
fighters are either there's no middle. There's like they're either world level or they're not.
Exactly right. So there's a big gap between world class and mediocre rest of the bunch. So, and he was the top of the rest of the bunch. But when you really step in against the guys who has that kind of ability, you know, it becomes very difficult. So in that sense, as a manager of Ren, I have to say that, of course, Mikuru Asakura fight is a huge fight. Oh, and that has to happen somewhere. And it should be happening in maybe next year's New Year's Eve, right? I mean, so that means you have to build that fight in next couple of fights during the year. So his opponent has to be something that makes sense towards that road to the versus Mikuru fight. And I feel like we should do that next year because I have a feeling Mikuru retire.
Oh yeah, or he'll start his own thing. Well, also Mikuru has enough guys around him who are mediocre MMA fighters.
Yes.
That you can almost build a story by having Ren beat up those guys and fight his way to the Mikuru fight.
Right.
Because some of Mikuru's guys, they fight in deep or they fight in pancrase and just beat those guys up and just build the storyline. I think you get a lot of attention, a lot of heat, and that'd be really exciting.
That'd be one of the way too, but it becomes very, very difficult because do you match Ren against some unknown guy with 2-3 fights? You know, right now, I always says oh, he's maybe he should be fighting a guy who's less than 5 fights, whatever. You know, that's a normal way of thinking, right? To build the fighters, but now he has beaten the guy who has almost 30 fights, who used to be a deep champion and stuff like that. In terms of RIZIN scale, the matchmaking is going to be very difficult. You know,
right? Yeah.
So, but we'll see. I mean, he's going to be a very interesting career. At the end of maybe 10, 15 years down the road, I can reveal everything about everything, and people will be surprised. You know.
Well, he's still very young. So, I mean, he still has a lot of time to grow.
And I will say this on the record, like, because he reviewed it because he bought a very expensive watch, right, at Rolex, and you can guess how much that watch cost. And that's funny thing about it is, like, this is what he told me, that there's two things he wanted to buy, right? As a professional, when he decided to become a professional fighter, he wanted to buy two things. One was the Rolex Diana watch, whatever that is that I call. I'm not really. That's the one thing he achieved. And next thing he wants to buy is Ferrari. Then I said, oh, okay, all right. Then he realized he doesn't have a driver's license. So, you're gonna have to go get that driver's license very good soon, because he wants to come to States and train again.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I told him that maybe it's better to bring an international license and rent a car because it makes your life easier.
Yeah.
So he has to go get a license for that too. So, but anyway, so it's going to be very interesting for him, you know?
Oh, yeah, very interesting.
So now, next topic. Let's talk about this one. What happened to the hydration test?
So I have a lot of questions about this. So
I know you had to, right? So
first off, do you manage Hirata, or are you just helping?
No, I do not manage.
You're just friendly with them.
No, here's what it is. I'm a consultant for Abema TV Kaktogi department, and she's managed by basically Abema TV. So
Okay.
Abema TV contacted me to arrange her fight camp. And also her and her brother was the first episode of those Fighters Diary training MMA abroad. So because of that, I had to arrange their training at the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu in Cerro Longo. And after that, when she went back, I guess they had to talk with Abema, and she realized that she needs to be in state to train. So she came back for another fight camp. So I did arrange coach or GM, place to stay, eat, not eat, but whatever. But I did not go to Singapore with her because I'm not her manager. And no, I did talk to the coach, because I know the coach well on daily basis. But I think I don't want to defend her, because she knows the rules, the hydration test, a weight, and everything like that. And I think what Ham did is correct. I mean, she has every right to say no. But also you have to understand that Ham just gave up her right to win the win bonus too. I mean, not the right, the opportunity to win the win bonus, or even 50K extra bonus or whatever, or get a raise after the win. So she did give up a lot. And I don't know. I think the bottom line here is this. Like Yuya Wakamatsu, how he had to drink a lot of water to pass the hydration test, and he weighed in at 139 when he was supposed to weigh 135. I think on one's hydration test, it's very, very tricky, and it depends on what you are, and it's really hard to measure it daily to kind of control it. So she would have to cut to like 110 and drink like 4 pounds of water before she stepped onto the scale. That's the surest thing to pass this hydration test and the weigh-ins at one championship, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little harsher on Itsuki because this is the third time it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And she's spent her entire career in one championship. I know the hydration test wasn't there the entire time, but it's at the point where, because every other opponent just accepted it, and she went on and fought and won those fights, and then there seemed, besides the monetary penalty, there was no penalty. I mean, if she won this fight, she was going to get a title shot off of missing weight the previous fight and the fight before that.
Right.
And I think she missed weight and failed the hydration test for this. And I think Ham's big issue that she said was that Itsuki didn't even seem apologetic about it. And I think Itsuki, I know that Aoki's ripped into her in the past for some like mental blocks and mental issues like she might be having with her mindset going forward. And I just don't understand how you can miss weight and the rules in the system and then do the exact same thing in your very next fight. It just seems, especially when you have a title fight on the line, you'd think because a title fight is on the line, she'd have everything perfect for this. And I just don't get how she missed weight again.
Oh, I mean, I can't get into the details. I know exactly why she missed weight. But I think the bottom line here is that her entire mindset during the fight week is not a mindset of a competitive athlete. She became a maybe idol singer who needs to be pampered to feel
Right.
good to get on the stage. But fight week is not like that. You got to go in there, walk in there as a team. It's like going to war because your opponent is like a predator, right? I mean, who threatens your life basically, you know. But I think the whole attitude towards the fight that she just didn't learn, and I think I've told both Arsen and Naoki, which is her brother, the first time when they came to US, that I suggest them to not corner her anymore because they're not professional when it comes to training fighters and blah blah blah. But they still wanted to do it on their own thing, you know? And they feel that it's the story they want to create, it's the sister and brother kind of thing, want to do things together. But it's not like that in this level, you know?
Yeah.
It's the time they need to fire those amateurs and get professional team going is what basically I told them after this. So I think she would have to do that, you know?
Well, especially when you have a title shot on the line. Like,
Right.
this is the because I remember Ham Sohee's coach is her brother-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a very popular YouTube channel in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it gets like millions of views. It's kind of wild. And because Ham Sohee had trouble with the weight and the hydration at first when she first came to one championship,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the backstage footage. I mean, she went to the hospital, she was doing all sorts of stuff, and then she made a decision to herself that she was absolutely going to make weight and it wasn't going to happen again, and it hasn't happened since. So I mean, it's doable. You just have to plan for it, and I just don't know what Itsuki's. I mean, there's so much media coverage around Itsuki. You'd think that she would have even more pressure not to fail the weight check.
I mean, here's what it is: at the bottom, at the worst scenario, even though she fails the hydration test, if she made the actual weight on the first time when she stepped on the scale, it became a little bit of different, right? But she missed that weight and missed the hydration test. So, but anyway, I mean, I can't really talk so much because I know all the details, but she would have to change her mindset, and then
I will say, I do also have some empathy for her because I know that Japanese fans can be vicious, and I know that she's been kind of absent. She hasn't been on social media at all, and I hope. But I can just imagine the type of messages she's receiving because she is not. I think most of her fan base is not Japanese.
I don't think so. Right.
And most Japanese MMA fans do not like her at this point.
That's because they feel that she's being pampered or privileged or whatever, right? You know.
Well, I think in Japan it's a huge issue if you miss weight.
Mm-hmm.
They really hate it if you miss weight in Japan.
Oh, I know. You can never act like a Chimaev. You get shot.
So I mean, she's missed weight now 3 times in a row. They're like losing their shit. Like, what the hell is this girl doing? So yeah.
Yeah. We'll
so I have
see.
empathy for her because she's probably receiving a ton of hate mail at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope that just. I mean, she's a popular fighter. I think she's a fun personality, a fun character to follow. I just wish she'd get the weight together.
You know, I have to agree with the Chatri said that she has to turn herself into have a life of athletes. And I did explain to her that like you have to have this thing called habit of excellence, meaning you have to have that excellence from the daily life to get better, you know? So you can't be up 3 a.m. doing Instagram live.
No.
And oversleep your physical therapy session kind of stuff, you know? That kind of fighter will never win.
Well,
you know, when they get to the like grinding, push come to shove kind of moment, right? So
it's like that Abima video where Aoki ripped into her for not being a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said it was all out of frustration because I think he sees that she has.
I'm going to tell you this very interesting story, Charlie. I mean, I'm going to apologize first before I say that. Mizuki, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to reveal this. That remember Mizuki missed weight at Invicta Phoenix tournament at the end?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, our plan was she was winning the tournament. Hopefully she can go to the UFC. She misses weight. I lectured her big time, right? I'm like, you're not going to get into UFC for a long while. How are you going to make a living? You know what I made her to? Go and get a job. So I made her go do job interviews at the various ramen place in Japan. I made her wait tables and everything else. And a couple weeks into the job, her English is not quite good enough, so she gets fired. So I made her go through a real hardship like that. And after that, we got a call from UFC that, there's a last minute open spot. So she got lucky. But I made her go through things like that. I kind of lecture her that how much time coaches have spent. Look at the Now you're earning zero money. How are you going to pay coaches and blah, 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 right? That's what somebody needs to do, Itsuki. It's not my job, but they need to sit around with her. I'll go through with the money that Abema spent on her for the entire cap, and I was just like, how do I pay that back? You know?
Well, what drove me crazy was during her, when Aoki sat her down and like essentially yelled at her, she made the comment, I'm not just a fighter, I'm a young woman, I want to have fun. And Aoki just like yelled at her that she'll never be a pro with that kind of mindset.
You know, I always tell this to any young Japanese fighter, like I say, like a guy like Jose Aldo come from a dead poverty level. Or I know for the fact Jacare told me the story that his best friend got shot in his head and he was carrying the boy, you know, on his lap. And the guy's coming from that kind of environment. You know, when you fight fighters like that, you're not going to win if you don't have a life of athletes. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the best example is like, what was the old Fedor quote? He was, I see every opponent is trying to take the food away from my family and return me to a state of poverty. So I have to destroy them.
Exactly. That's what I told my guys, that your opponent's a predator. They're here to take half of your money away, maybe take your contract away, take the food out of your kid's mouth and stuff like that. That's how you see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, that's what she needs to realize. The point is that, because theoretically, what if Abema cuts her?
Well, she needs to realize it before it's too late, because
exactly. What if that new, younger, better fighter comes along? This better looking a female fighter may come tomorrow, or maybe it's already there, right? So
who knows more than a head and arm throw? No.
Right. So, but anyway, I mean, that's what I did to Mizuki. I don't know if Itsuki's parents would do that, but I'm an old fashioned, and I consider Itsuki sort of like my niece at this point. So I did.
I think she needs tough love, because
exactly,
whatever's been going on now isn't working.
Right, exactly. So that's not working well, right? So, all right. So now, let's cover on this one. Did you read this article?
Well, I saw that the rumor is they released the schedule and it wasn't announced. And the word is that Chan Sang-jan needs shoulder surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is that if he can't compete on the card, the UFC doesn't want to do a Korea event. All right, and if you remember in the Jose Aldo fight, didn't his shoulder pop out? I think he has a long history of shoulder issues.
Right. And I think that too. And also, like our client, I have 2 clients confirmed for this show. And for some reason, maybe because of the pandemic, now Korea is requiring all the fighters and the cornermen to get a proper work visa. And really? It's actually, yes, it's being a little bit of chaos. And I wouldn't say chaos, but we have to turn in like a real high res, color scan passport. They wouldn't take just a photo and stuff like that. But anyway, the bottom line here is that you have to leave the passport at the Korean embassy for 2 weeks, meaning many
can't go anywhere.
Not go anywhere for 2 weeks, and that's actually an issue. Like even me, I'm coming back from state to Japan to here on 14th of January. If I go interview on 16th to leave a passport there for 2 weeks, I can't leave till 31st. That's absolutely like so I have a feeling, and this deadline to turn in the passports and all the different things was this past Monday. And I know a lot of the coaches and the cornermen and fighters are traveling all the time.
Yeah.
They probably won't be able to get to FedEx or Home Depot to do color scanning and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people miss the deadlines. And that's also another headache too, I think,
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate if it doesn't happen, because the Korea events historically have been really good events.
It is, right?
Yeah. A bunch of really good Korean talent. So.
Right. But I think they could easily switch to States or some other show, right? They could still do the show on that weekend so they can air on ESPN, and they could do it in States easily. And if there's some visa issues, I'm pretty sure they can do it in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi will allow them to do anything, pretty much. I feel like that way, right? So
it's good to have Abu Dhabi be an investor.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like I told you this, Abu Dhabi, I don't think we have to do any visas. They don't withhold tax. So, I mean, that's one of the good place for a fighter to fight.
Yeah, sounds too good. Almost too good to be true.
All right, so now
I'm interested you brought up Korea. Have you noticed that Deep has been doing a lot of co-promotion with a Korean company?
Right. Seigo Yamamoto, who is the boyfriend of Park Seo, I
Yes.
think he became a medium person, and he's in talk with Deep and was Black Angel, whatever that is. That
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Mhm.
and I think they're thinking about doing some all out like team competitions in February at the arena houses about 5,000 people.
Because I know that Deep has already released several YouTube videos of
Mm-hmm.
Saiki talking about his like long history of Korean fighters,
Mm-hmm.
and they should because this Korean promotion kind of looks like a breaking down kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's like young, popular, like good-looking influencer kind of guys,
I
and
think so, right.
and I do know that somebody tried to call Saiki and Terumi and got a message that they were in Korea over last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this Korean stuff's going to happen between them.
I think so too. I think it's gonna happen, but I don't know what kind of money they're gonna pay, that kind of stuff. So, you know,
Deep
I'm not,
always does the most. Remember when Deep co-promoted with that Mongolian promotion for one show? It's just like Deep. I mean, all the credit to Saiki. He's willing to take a risk. He's willing to
yes,
go to new markets. It's great.
yes. It's gonna be very interesting, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's talk about this one. Since I manage him as well, I can't really get into it, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to find out. Now,
Yeah.
uh, all right, let's see how much can we talk about this one. All right, so I think everyone knows that he got signed to UFC to fight in Abu Dhabi show.
Mhm.
But a couple of days before the fight week started, Shuto sent UFC a fax claiming that he has 4-month exclusive negotiation period. Therefore, they asked UFC to cancel the fight. But what happened was that Yamato has never signed any contract. So he went into the notary public in Japan and wrote a letter and signed it and declared that he's never signing a contract with Shuto. So that's not false. That's not true. Blah, blah, blah. And we send that letter back to UFC. But his opponent also had the contract issue. So it was just not enough time to solve anything. So the fight got canceled. And because of the fact he was supposed to fight they signed him to fight in that show. Since that fight didn't happen, they just released his contract. So he's not with the UFC anymore. Now, as a management, we had to fight and kept asking if you claim that Yamato signed a contract, give me the copy of a contract, right? And we kept asking for the copy of the contract. It took them more than a month to get us a contract that they claimed that he signed. But the contract we received, it was signed by somebody else. It was obviously a different person's handwritten. And you know how Japanese contract, you have to stamp your own particular stamp. That stamp stamped on that the contract was not his stamp. So we know. I think his maybe ex-manager just signed it and stamped it.
Yeah.
So, but right now they're claiming 4-month exclusive negotiation period, which we don't care. But the bottom line is like that means is he fought in October 19th. So by January 19th, there's nothing for them to claim.
It seems so weird and petty. If he has no intention of signing with them, why are they making him wait so
exactly.
months?
And the problem here is that they sent a letter to Yamato demanding to pay him some kind of penalty for breaking the contract while he was still under their contract. And the money they demanded was 2 million yen, which is like about $15,000. That's not even close to the money he was getting paid. So I've never heard of any MMA promotion who sends a letter to fighter demanding some kind of penalty money.
Well, I mean, if I was them, I'd be more nervous that he would sue them for interfering with his contract with the UFC.
Right. But again, in Japan, to do that, you would require a lot of money to initiate the lawsuits and stuff like that. And
it would also cost Shuto a lot of money to sue them, and I don't think Shuto has that kind of money rolling around anymore.
No, not anymore. Yeah. And on top of that, if we initiate that kind of lawsuits, we'll be tangled into this battle, and it might prevent him to get fights going, right? So right now, my top priority to try to get him signed to UFC. If not, then somewhere else or whatever, or at least maybe one fight somewhere, kind of stuff. So that's where he's at right now, which I can't really talk so much anymore. Yeah.
Well, that's what I always liked, like Deep and Pancrase, because when deep fighters or pancreas fighters go to the UFC, those promotions almost always like praise them or like hold them up as examples. It's like, look at how good our fighters are. They're going to the UFC.
I will tell you this on the record. Like, for example, Yusaku Kinoshita, when he fought in Dana White's Contender Series, there one clause on his contract the way he had to kind of settle. You know, Pancras, no problem. He was all happy. Yeah, go ahead, do it. It's your chance.
Yeah.
Right? Deep, there are so many fighters who went to one championship or somewhere else or UFC or whatever, even though they have a contract with Deep. And they just ignore that. They didn't even tell Sayaki nothing. And they sign, and sometimes they talk bad about Sayaki on Twitter, whatever there is. They still get to go back to Deep.
Yeah.
So
Remember with the whole Ren Hiramoto situation, Sayaki was like, hey, if that UFC offer comes, go fight for the UFC. If anything comes, go do that. But in the meantime, just we can get you fights too.
Right. But Shuto is the other way around, I think.
Yeah.
If you don't like them or if you don't go over there and meet them and talk to them and ask for their permissions in person and blah, 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 if you don't have to go those trips, they don't like you, you know? And but you
they've
have
been
to,
affected by one championship. They have the one championship mindset now. So.
Right. And also you have to understand though, this thing called like a Giri, it is a Netflix drama called Giri Haji in Netflix. So maybe you can watch this, but Japanese really tend to honor about this, the honoring the people who used to deal with. So if you're changing a course, or if you're making a different decisions, you're supposed to pay due by visiting them, explain to them beforehand, and they get okay. You know, it's not really about the contract or anything like that. But something like that would be very difficult for a guy who lives in Hokkaido, because when you get an offer like that, you have to answer in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
You can't, then you call this person. If this person doesn't return your call till the next day, your offer is gone. So what are you going to do, right? So you notify them. You know, that's what we did. We notified to Shuto back in September 22nd. I have all the record and saying that we don't believe we have a contract, so we were going to talk to UFC. We notified them before even I got on the table to talk to, you know, the negotiation. And they waited till a couple of days before the fight week to send that, you know, fax to block that fight and send that letter, another letter to Yamamoto demanding the money. So I think that's a shady move, you know, way I look at it, you know.
That's super shady.
Yeah. And after we asking for a copy of a contract for over a month, it took about over a month to give us a contract. And they're gonna ask him to go call and visit their office and pay dues. You know,
it's just weird to me. It's like, what do they expect to get out of this? In every possible way, it just makes them look bad.
It is making them look bad. And as you know, I'm pretty vocal, and I've already talked about this publicly many times and wrote about it and stuff like that. So it's just not producing anything positive, period.
No.
You know,
this guy clearly doesn't want to fight for your promotion. He wants to go up to the next level.
But you know what's
funny? You're going to pettily stop him? That's going to piss him off.
You're right. But Charlie, I'm telling this on the record. Because of this happened, they came up with a new contract. So all the other Shooter fighters got this new contract, and their clauses are much tougher than before. Now they specify how much the penalty. They specify it's 2 million yen you're gonna have to pay if you break this contract. And there's a one clause that says that you are not allowed to relinquish title unless Shuto says okay. So once you became a champion, you're under that clause for life, basically. You know?
That's just so stupid.
Right. But again, I think that's how they want to do. So I think just the fighter has to fight for their right. That's all, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So let's touch on the last subject of the year, because I think we need to do this is Rin Nakai tweet.
Yeah, it seems like her tweets have taken a darker tone recently. It seems like she said she's like, well, it's this general same theme of what people are saying false things about me.
Right.
But she also like mentioned like suicidal thoughts or something. It was kind of weird.
She basically she kept saying like somebody's blocking her for getting a fight, somebody's blocking her for getting signed to UFC, and you know, so they don't have the money, and they're almost ready to.
Well, I think she's also recently mentioned that she's open to promotions outside of the UFC.
Exactly. Well. Finally, she said, "Oh, I've never said it's only UFC." But the problem is this: look at this video. She says something. They post something like that, and she puts goggles on, and he does this swimming in the bathtub. You know?
Yeah, her video.
Yeah.
What does that say? Like, I'm a top athlete. Like with the
Right. I'm a
they.
top athletes, and I'm put myself in the bathtub to rest my tired body. And Kancho Usami is always thinking about my conditions and blah blah blah. So she's like keep like a. I think she's trying to tell fans that she can't get fight because somebody else is blocking her,
No,
and
she's blocking
it's
herself. It's
right.
just idiotic.
Right. It's not her that she's doing the two. A lot of people think it's the Usami, that her husband slash trainer is the one who's writing Twitter, but she's trying to claim, no, it's me. I'm doing it. You
Yeah.
know?
It is so weird because, I mean, she had a very good year in a very short time span. She won 3 fights. She won a championship.
Mm-hmm.
If she kept that going, she could go somewhere. She could fight for a big promotion, but fighting and then taking a year off, no one's going to pay attention.
Right. I mean, I don't know why she doesn't really go talk to RIZIN and ask them to call Bellator.
Yeah.
Why not? It only makes sense. She wanted to fight Kana, right? What the
Well, I
heck?
mean, that fight is handmade for this RIZIN versus Bellator. Just have Ren Hiramoto versus Watanabe Kana in the Japan show.
Exactly. I mean, if Rin fought for RIZIN a couple times this year, she would be fighting New Year's Eve against Kana, right?
Yeah.
I mean, more than likely.
It's like they don't understand that you have to like work your way up to things. It's almost insane what they're doing.
Right.
And I agree with what Andrew is saying, that it seems like she does legitimately. If she is writing these tweets, she legitimately needs some type of psychiatric help.
Yeah, but I really think, like I say, I really think this is the issue of mental domestic violence, though. I really think so. I really think Usami is not allowing her to do things, and she's not allowed to see a different world, you know?
Is this a weird thing where he says like messages like that to get people to send them more money?
Mm-hmm.
Because I noticed recently she's been tweeting pictures of like gifts people have given her.
I know the gift certificates and rices they sent her, blah, blah, blah.
So does he post these things about suicidal thoughts to get people to feel bad for her, to like send them more stuff?
It's like a beggars.
Well, that's what it is. Yeah, no, they are beggars.
Beggars can be a chooser. I'm telling you, she has to like make her own move. And, I mean, she's what, 36 now? It's not getting any younger.
Well, I mean, she had a wasn't she? I think she was getting offers from KSW that fell apart. I'm like, why not go fight for KSW? She can be huge in Poland.
Yeah.
Like, why would she not go abroad? KSW is huge. They have a ton of money.
Exactly. Right. And I think PFL might at 125 too, right? So why not? Dude.
I mean, obviously, I think like her main goal, realistically, should just be like kick ass in Japan, get into Bellator. Because that division in Bellator is ripe for her to take the championship.
Right.
In my opinion, but
in a way, I'm kind of happy that finally she said, I'm not only thinking UFC, because like Anthony Pettis said, that lots of fighters are so-called addicted to UFC.
Yeah.
And that actually applies to a lot of Japanese fighters too. Like for example, guys who fought in road to UFC, like Koyomi Matsushima or guy like Sasuke, they did well, but unfortunately they didn't win. Now, what they should do, like if you're a fighter who's not a Japanese fighter, you think about rebuilding your career, right? So you can't go back to UFC immediately. So you sign with the Bellator or PFL or whoever to try to rebuild that career. But these guys are only thinking about UFC. So they would not even consider any other promotions except the feeder shows where they can always go to UFC. But what are the chances of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the same kind of mentality that she had. But now she has opened her eyes to outside the UFC now. So, but again, who knows, right?
I mean, there's so many options for her, and it's just weird that they don't take advantage of any of them.
Right, but options are running out, though.
Yeah.
It really is running out. So, I mean, but it shouldn't be so hard for her to get fight.
Well, clearly she just needs a real manager that they don't interfere with.
Yeah, she will never get that, because as long as she's with this coach, and she declared that she would never do anything without this coach, right?
Yeah.
So it comes as a package. So they have to understand that's the biggest load of baggage she's carrying.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
it's
again,
very strange.
It's very, very strange. I think, again, like I say, I want some documentary filmmaker to reach out to them and start filming.
Well, it's interesting because if you ever do speak to them, they don't like talking about their past that much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when you interview them, it's kind of interesting. So it's like, oh, tell me about your judo background. And they'll be like, well, we don't want to talk about that. You're like, oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure when you ask a question, Lin looks at Usami and Usami tells her what to answer, right?
Well, yeah, but from what I understand from older articles that I've read, she was a very high level judoka who got injured.
Mm-hmm.
So then she had to drop out of college. And it seemed like it sunk her into this like depression funk. She didn't know what to do with her life because she could no longer do judo. It was during that time period that she met Wild Usami. And so it seems like to me that he met her during a very vulnerable moment in her life.
Maybe.
And maybe it's been that ever since. I don't know what's going on, but it seems weird. And I know foreign fans, at least, are like, these tweets are very strange.
Right. And also, I think people outside Japan doesn't realize that for athletes who wants to pursue MMA career, you'd be surprised. If you don't live in a metropolitan area, your choices are very, very limited. You may not even have one, right? So she's at the Shikoku Island, and entire 4 prefectures. I'm pretty sure there's like 1 or 2 gyms you can train MMA.
Well,
Usami happened to be one of them, you know?
She clearly should have moved years ago.
Years ago to Tokyo, right? Years ago, right?
I mean, that's what Rena did. Rena moved from Osaka to Tokyo. Everyone moves there. I mean, Japan doesn't have the best mixed martial arts training anymore.
No.
But if you want to get the best you can get in Japan, it's still in Tokyo.
Right. Or Osaka, at least. Even Osaka is kind of hard because, for example, Mr. Yusaki Kinoshita, who's in Florida now, till he won that UFC contract, although he's a welterweight, he's never sparred against somebody who's in his size. He always sparred against lightweight or featherweight. So, and right now, to go back to Yamamoto Nishikawa, he's in Bangtao in Thailand now with her father and planning to stay there for a long time. But he even said he's from Hokkaido. So he said he wants to train. He contacted his training partner and said, hey, let's train. But they're like, oh, we have to figure out the time, schedule everything. So it's never that smooth. No. But when you come here or even Bangtao, he's like, oh, let's train. There's always a lot of partners available. So that's a huge difference already. So, yeah, I mean, that's too bad for Rin, Hopefully she'll do something in 2023.
Hope for the best. Hopefully next year she gets a bunch of fights and does well.
But I'm telling you right now,
fighter.
My prediction is that it's going to be the same next year, unfortunately. And you know what? I want to answer this one question. It says here, first, Takahashi winning CFS flyweight makes him one of the few Japanese fighters to have won regional belt outside Asia. Others, Matsuda, Yasube Uemoto, and Tanaka Horiuchi looking for UFC title. Now, why do you think caused the fighters to move to America or other Western nations? How, I'll tell you right now, they would love to all move to states and train because it's just the training environment is better. Like I say, variety of training partners are here, but it costs too much money for them at this point. So it's not that easy, right?
Well, I was actually talking to my friend Babalu Jack recently. We do a podcast together as well, but he's noticed a trend of now a lot of Japanese fighters. I think they've noticed that you can get paid a lot more if you fight abroad. I think they saw that Kana Watanabe got some pretty good money for her Bellator fights.
So it's Kudo on PFL, right?
Yeah, so exactly. And they're seeing, because the UFC, a lot of those salaries, depending on the jurisdiction, are released. And they're like, oh, I'm fighting in Shuto where I get paid $1,000. I could be getting paid 80 times that to fight in one of these other promotions.
Right.
Maybe I should be fighting over there.
Right. But I want to answer this RIZIN will die. I can give you the answer here that, sure, of course, all the Japanese would love to fight American regional promotions. But the problem is that feeder shows will not pay for your flight and stuff like that, right? Because
it's also
the point. They're not selling tickets here. So I got to bring in some deals like what I did with CFFC. I brought in a deal from Abema to do a live streaming in Japan so they could get this licensing fee to cover the flights and stuff like that, right? So we have to cut deals like that. Otherwise, it won't be that easy for not only Japanese, but non-American to just come to the feeder shows and fight.
You also got to think about it, like the old Invicta days. I mean, for a Japanese fighter to go fight for a regional promotion in the U.S., that realistically means you have to take a week off of work and then you're going to go, and if you win, you're getting like what, $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so you probably have to pay. They might pay for one of your corpsmen to come out. So you have to pay for any other teammates to go out. So you're not making any money to do this
much, yeah.
And you have to have a job that's allowing you to leave weeks
so
at a time throughout the year.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's not very practical.
Exactly. But however, yen is super weak now compared to dollar, right? Like we talked about. And like yearly average income of Japanese is only 30,000 a year, when the bartender across the street making 60,000 a year here in New York City. So for them, it's attractive to fight in the US because it's more money. Even the feeder shows more money than Pancras or whatever, Shuto. But the problem is, from promoters' point of view, there's no benefit of bringing in Japanese fighters in, right? So if there's another perks involve it, so it's not going to be that easy. And to even move to train, it's going to be very difficult for the Japanese fighter because it's just expensive. Everything is way too expensive. Bowl of ramen is double this, cost. So that's what it is. Unfortunately, yeah.
Also, to my final thing on this comment would be that a lot of why do they want to do that recently is I would say that a lot of like Mikuru went and trained and Kai went and trained, and those YouTube videos were very popular. And after that, a bunch of Japanese fighters wanted to go train in the US too.
Right, but again, even Mikuru and Kai went for like a month or a couple of weeks, right? Because it costs a lot of money. And like I said, I arranged for Itsuki's fight camp for 2 months in New York City. Imagine how much it costs, right? So
yeah.
Not
enough for her to make weight.
Yeah. So, anyway, so this is the end of our podcast for the year 2022. I guess I'll see you in Japan, though. I'll reach out to you because
perfect.
Yeah, maybe we can do something there, and we'll be back next year.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay.
We talk about the RIZIN year, so hopefully Naoki does well.
I hope so.
that fight seems tailor-made for him, right?
I hope so. Yeah, we'll see. I'll be there. So.
Well, now that the boss is here to make sure he's training hard.
Well, you know what? The funny boss won't be cornering him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Boss even says, "I don't know if he wants to hear my advice anymore." So we'll see.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. All right, cool. Well,
all right. So I'll see you next year.
Yeah, see you next year.
All right. Thank you for listening, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.